Hi, welcome to City at a Glance. I'm your host, David Young, and here on City at a Glance, we talk about issues that are of great interest to the City of Fort Collins. Today, we have a special topic, which is high-speed broadband internet access. As always, joining us is our City Manager, Darren Atterbury. Darren, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, David. Good to be here.
Thank you. Also with us today is Sana Kendall. Sana is our Economic Policy and Project Manager. Sana, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, David.
And also with us is Clint Reitz. Clint is our Telecom Systems Administrator. Clint, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to kick things off, Darren, I'll ask you, to begin with, as the demand for more reliable, affordable, and easy access to high-speed internet broadband continues, the city obviously must define its role in providing that service to citizens. Currently, where does the city stand when it comes to providing access or availability to high-speed broadband access?
So you're going to start with the hard question first?
I'll get right into it.
Thanks, David.
Yeah.
I think that's part of what we're doing right now is trying to figure out what is the, what's our long-range blueprint as a community, and then what role does the city of Fort Collins play in that? I think it's fair to say that staying with status quo is not going to work. That our current, the available services to this community, in my opinion, and I think also in the voters' opinion, if you look at what happened recently at the ballot box, that we're not adequately served. We don't have appropriate options. There may be pricing issues, there may be customer service issues, but certainly what everyone can agree on is that faster speeds and greater reliability, things like that, are going to be really, really important. And I think as city leaders, mayor and council and others, as we look at the future of Fort Collins and staying competitive and being an attractive place for, let's say, the creative class. These are people who have a choice to live anywhere on the planet. Why did they locate where they're going to locate? And I think everything that we read, and we'll talk more about it in a little bit, but every community we talk to is access to broadband is critical. Mm-hmm. So I think our current status is inadequate given that future sort of look. So I'm really excited about the conversation today. I appreciate what you guys have been doing, and we're coming off a great vote. The voters have said, yeah, we want you to explore this. The only other thing I'll say as part of this introduction is that, I think some people think that we have our minds made up and we've predetermined some option, and we haven't. We're learning. And with the support of the voters and the mayor and council, I think we're going to go full steam ahead, saying let's help define that future.
Definitely. So, in reference to the vote that Darren just mentioned, I believe it was 83% in November passed the overturned Senate Bill 152. So, just to begin with, I'd kind of like to dig into that a little. Could we start with SB 152, as it's known, and kind of explain why that was on the ballot to begin with, and just a little bit of background of why that needed to go to the ballot and to the voters before we could proceed with this process?
Sure, David. SB 152 was enacted in 2005 by our Colorado State Legislature, and it was one of those laws that actually had snuck in, so to speak, without much opposition at the time. And it specifically prohibited municipalities or communities from providing advanced telecom services, in particular high-speed internet. One of the language pieces in the ballot was an artifact that said that we as a municipality can vote to provide our own high-speed internet if we wish. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the ballot measure that Darren is speaking about now. And we're not the only city in the state to have such a success rate. In fact, 47 communities in total in the state voted this November and had a 70% or higher success rate. So
definitely
good news for the industry.
Yeah, and that really speaks volumes, that vote Colorado-wide. I know here the day after the vote, we started getting calls from people inquiring kind of what the next steps were. So based on that, Sana, maybe you can tell folks a little bit more about what the next steps are now that this vote has come through.
Yeah, as you mentioned, we did get a lot of calls the next day, and one of the things we really want to do is really manage the community's expectation. Mm-hmm. It didn't mean that on November 4th you were getting connected to 1 gig services. And so right now what we've been doing is really trying to get smart, as Darren likes to say, in really looking at all the benchmarks, what has been done in the past. There is no playbook, so each community has looked at it differently. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces that we're getting from this, and really looking at this. So for the benchmark, we looked at 18 different communities, and 18 communities did it differently. There was no standard project. And so I think that was a critical piece. We also learned such things as there's things that you can do that are very simple, such as policy changes. And when simple, it means that it wouldn't be an active model. It would be very passive in terms of that. So we looked at various strategies. I think we looked at overall 7 strategies, from policy changes all the way to municipal-owned retail provider.
I see, definitely.
From my standpoint, I think that the conversation actually began with our policymakers at our City Council Futures Committee, and we invited in some of the providers, current providers, and said, "What's the future? What's your future in Fort Collins?" And we want to hear your vision. And frankly, it was disappointing. And again, I think of the words inadequate. And so I think our council said, let's remove barriers. Let's ask the voters if we can remove barriers and have this conversation barrier free. So again, it wasn't a here's the predetermined outcome, but it was council, I think, very intentionally said, we're concerned about our current trajectory, and let's remove the barriers. Let's have a thorough conversation. So I think it was a conversation about our future, really.
Definitely. I wanted to jump back real quick to one thing Sana had noted, which was 1 gig. For those out there who might not be as familiar with broadband, would you mind explaining specifically what that means and kind of high-speed broadband, sort of that definition that we're going by?
Clint's
Clint's kind of the expert in that area.
Yes.
Our federal regulators, or the FCC, in fact, came out and said, what in effect is a high-speed internet connection? What's a good enough internet connection? And I believe that 30 megabits was what was listed, which is very low. For our community, I believe that's too low. Many of our incumbents are offering 30 megabits, and folks are just needing more bandwidth. Gigabit is in fact 1,000 megabits. And when we look at the industry trend, we are absolutely headed that way when we think of connected devices. Connected devices are your phone, your tablet at home. We're even getting to the point where we're connecting things in your home, so your thermostats and even your appliances. All of those require bandwidth, and we need to be ready to provide that.
Definitely.
And be ready for that to come. So how do we provide it? The industry has fluctuated between a wireless and a wireline standard. There's been advances in both, and what's been really come out of the weeds lately is fiber optics, clearly a top choice to provide connectivity to your to enable bandwidth. And if we think of fiber optics, we're future-proofing. We're going to be able to provide more than 1 gig. In fact, there really isn't an end yet in sight as far as that technology goes with fiber optics.
So the future is really limitless. And, for a lot of people right now, they think, oh, I want to be able to stream my Netflix faster or whatnot. But this really, speaking to your point, Darren,
That's right.
is talking about the future. And can you kind of maybe highlight some of those, like hospitals, schools, that digital divide that we're really working towards?
Well, I think you just captured it. And when you were talking, I was thinking, this isn't about my 17-year-old son getting a Netflix connection better. This is about economic vibrancy. In addition to my son getting faster speeds for Netflix, but that's not the real big issue here. What about the engineer who's doing teleworking and he can't or she can't function adequately from their third space or their home or wherever it is and doing their work? What about the CSU mathematics professor who's running significant modeling remotely? And so I think it's much more than when I open up my email, it's instantaneous. This isn't about reading email quicker and downloading videos. It's more and more and more people are counting on the transfer of information and doing, again, complex modeling and engineering and things like that, and we don't have that now. And what we're hearing from small, medium, and large businesses in town, including the university, and as you've said, the hospitals, and on and on and on, and large employers, they're very concerned about that. They're not. I hear concerns about today, but I absolutely hear concerns about what are we going to do 3, 5, 10, 25 years out. Mm-hmm. So I think you stated it well.
Definitely. So Sana, let me ask you, going back to that benchmark study, can you talk a bit more about some of those options that came out of that, or what specifically we're looking at to get to that 5, 10 years down the road that Darren's alluding to?
Yeah, so we looked at several strategies, such as the public policy changes, which would require a lot of coordination within the city organization as well as with private organizations that might be digging into the ground, let's say. There has been policy changes in regards to a dig once. So when you open the ground, letting everyone in there to put in all their lines, whether it's water, electricity, or telecommunications lines. We've also looked at such things as dark fiber leasing. So, and what that means is being able to lease that out for organizations to connect to their own organizations. So all of those are an interesting aspect. And then, there are others such as open access, which would be where we would act as a wholesaler. So, again, it would be the city putting in the infrastructure and then wholesaling that out to anyone of the private providers. So there's quite a few different opportunities in terms of that. The new emerging one that I think is an interesting one that continues to pop up is this public-private partnership.
Yes.
And what that looks like. And again, that one's fairly new, and so really trying to understand that and gather that information. It's been interesting. We also did a market analysis, and one of the things we found very interesting was Fort Collins was in the top 20 for subscriberships for internet. So we are very connected in Fort Collins, and I think that speaks to the innovation, the technology that's here, as well as, you look at Poudre School District and all the students now going into this online homework aspect too.
Yeah.
So we are seeing that.
Definitely. So one of the next steps is a council session on December 8th, a council work session. Darren, could you describe just kind of briefly what will transpire there and what we can expect from that?
Let Sana.
Defer to Sana. All right,
and then what I'll do is I'll add to that.
Certainly, yeah.
So the council work session is really to talk a little bit about the election and recap the election, as well as to talk about the benchmark study and really inform them about what has happened to date in regards to the benchmarking, to let them know that, yes, we've looked at 18, and what we really found is there is no playbook, right? Yeah. And so we really want to talk to council about what is the best for this community, right? And what is the risks and what are the rewards, all of those aspects, as well as the market analysis. In addition, we're going to talk about what the future looks like in regards to the broadband strategic plan, and really kind of lay out what the timeline would look like, what community engagement's going to look like for the future. And again, this will all be kind of that roadmap to get us to that point. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing in asking council for feedback in regards to what we've looked at, what they would like us to continue to pursue. We are looking at a broadband feasibility study. And when we looked at the 6 strategies is really a lot to go and delve deep into feasibility analysis, SWOT analysis, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for each of those different types of strategies, and really building a business model for the community in regards to broadband.
Definitely. David, I think that what you asked Sana about between now and December, I think, as she mentioned, the bigger plan ultimately is to bring a recommendation to council as to how to move forward. So the extreme options are everywhere from do nothing, status quo, to building a fifth utility telecommunications facility or a utility. And then in between there, Sana has done a great job outlining, hybrid versions and all private models, public-private partnerships. So we, in coming to council in December, I think it's sharing what we've been learning, and also the city council resourced this effort. So we're not, we're learning very, very quickly on this area. This is not an area of expertise for most of us. But we are bringing folks on board on our team who have experience with this and really are aware of the sort of the national context. And then I think the goal is probably sometime late next fall to really come to council with a series of recommendations. And my hope would be that would be a recommendation in how to move forward. And then there's a lot of work that needs to get done in the following year, assuming if council's comfortable moving forward. But so I guess I want to make sure that people that are watching are very confident that this is not something that we just jump in and let's go forward. And by the way, that extreme option of a city utility could be several $100 million. So we're not going to do that in an uninformed way. If that is where we end up, that's going to be done in a very calculated, very strategic, thoughtful way with experts being brought in along the way. In fact, I've even suggested that we create an expert review panel that can give independent, objective reviews at various stages of this process. Yeah. Again, it's just to make sure that there's an additional set of eyes that are looking at this. But so in total, that's several years of work. Sana and Clinton team have been doing this for well over a year at this point. Yeah. And I know the council, this has been on their radar for several years as well.
Definitely. And as you said, and Sana, moving forward, this will be a multi-year project.
That's right.
For folks right now who may be sitting at home thinking, well, I'd like to give some input, I'd like to get involved. What are some steps for them, or how could they maybe provide their input and their thoughts on this? Obviously, the vote indicates that the public is very interested in this topic.
Yeah, first thing I would say is I would recommend the website, fcgov.com/broadband. On there, you can actually sign up for a newsletter. So as we're communicating that out, that would get sent to you electronically. Obviously, we've also talked about the engagement and going back and really talking to the community about where we're at in the different strategies and making sure that they're aware of those open houses, the communication, all of those aspects too.
Definitely. So so for anybody interested, fcgov.com/broadband, go there, sign up for the newsletter, and keep an eye out for future outreach events that we will be doing as a city if they'd like more information. Thank you all for joining me today. Is there anything else that anybody would like to add before we kind of wrap up for the day?
You got anything?
I just appreciate the support that we have to do our diligence behind this study. We truly have an amazing city group that gives us everything that we need to vet every possibility. Thank you.
And I think the community support's been huge.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think that's a big piece of that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I would agree with that. I think the support that we've gotten from higher ed, that we've gotten from what we call our social community, from the business community, from the mayor and council to be mindful of future. And, for me, it's a real sense of privilege to be able to do this and to be part of a community building. This doesn't happen very often, and we have to be very intentional about it. And the fact that the voters have said, yes, we trust you to move forward and be thoughtful about this. And to me, it's just yet again another reflective of Fort Collins as a community, and the voters continuing to say, yeah, let's look towards the future. Now, as you mentioned, there are many other cities in Colorado who have had elections to get from under these rules, out from under these rules. And in fact, I was in a meeting yesterday with the town manager of Estes Park and the city manager of Loveland, and our folks. And what we want to do is make sure we're all learning together as well. So no, I think it's really exciting to be part of this time in Fort Collins right now. For
It
sure.
is, definitely.
Yes.
Exciting times indeed. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Again, David Young, and this is City at a Glance. Make sure to join us next time and check out fcgov.com/broadband for more information, and keep an eye out for future information on our high-speed broadband internet project. Thank you very much.